I'm joined today by Dr. Randall Wright. Thanks for joining today.
Hi.
Dr. Wright is an associate professor and program director of Actuarial Science at Swansea University and is a fellow of the US Society of Actuaries. He's going to discuss and present today on global opportunities in actuarial science post-COVID-19. Without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Dr. Wright.
Okay, thank you. I'll share my screen then and bring this up. Okay.
Good.
So, starting here with a picture of our Bay campus, as Adam described, this is the campus that was built about 5 years ago. And it's a wonderful place to be teaching and learning mathematics because the mathematics academic staff had input into how our building, the computational foundry, would be designed. It's also notable here, since we're going to be talking about global opportunities in actuarial science post-COVID-19. And I know that there's a lot of fatigue about looking at COVID-19, a lot of feelings about that and what's happening in our world now, but there is a way forward, and actuaries are going to be part of figuring that out. I note also in this picture that way off on the upper side, like on the far right here in the picture, there's an abandoned movie studio across the highway from our Bay campus, which has been turned into a temporary hospital. They're calling them Nightingale hospitals in the United Kingdom, which can be used as needed for COVID-19 patients. As Adam described, I am the program director for actuarial science here at Swansea. Previous to coming here, I had worked as an actuary in the United States for over 20 years. So I brought that experience of being in a company, doing actuarial work. Now I'm back into an academic setting, bringing that to students. Okay, let me come back over here to the slideshow. And am I on to the next slide, Adam? I always like to check when I move slides that it's moving for everyone. Terrific.
That's okay.
Okay, so just to start off with some basic definitions about actuarial science. We are governed by the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, the accrediting body in the United Kingdom, which also operates in many countries around the globe and qualifies actuaries. The slogan for the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, E Peritia Ratio, drawing reason from experience. We look at the past, everything that we've seen up to this point, but we have to make predictions about the future. The basic mathematical proposition here is that we look at risk, and risk is a function of time, money, and the probability of some bad thing happening. It's a very simplified view of the functions that actuaries look at. In studying actuarial science and in working as an actuary, you're always looking at some combinations of these concepts to make sense of a situation. So as an actuary, I might set aside £1 million. It's going to grow with interest. If it grows at 5% interest, it will be £1,050,000 in a year. I expect that at the end of a year, I'm going to have insurance claims like 1,010 claims. That's my estimate. They'll be £1,000 each. I want a little cushion on that. So, that's a very simple sense of the kind of calculation that an actuary does. Working as an actuary, a typical day for me when I was working as an actuary, I went through a number of rotations, different parts of my company. For a time, I was designing and pricing insurance products, making sure that it's a proposition that works for consumers and that provides them the safety that they need, and that's also stable for the company, because in the public interest, the company has to remain in place for decades to be able to pay out insurance. I was involved in planning company risk strategy, how to approach various risks that we were calculating, and how the company would execute everything. We would run massive computer models with dedicated actuarial software to forecast results into the future. Then there are standardized reports to give company results and report what has been turning out. A publicly held company would have to report so that stock analysts could see that. The government is also interested in seeing those reports of what's going on. I spent a good chunk of my career as an actuary working on the administrative systems that carry out the insurance and make sure that everyone's getting the right amount of money. There's an enormous amount of time and money and probability calculations that go into those administrative systems. So on the whole, actuaries get paid well to think about mathematics and business risk, and then to explain that in a meaningful way. That's my nutshell definition of an actuary. So an actuary does a lot of mathematics, but definitely mixes in a good amount of business expertise and business training to understand how to carry that out. Now, when COVID-19 came along this year, the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries quickly mobilized to do something to understand this better. And that took the form of the IFoA's COVID-19 Action Taskforce, or ICAT. They put out a call for volunteers in March. I responded along with the many other volunteers, 580 and more volunteers so far. About half of those are qualified actuaries, working in industry or academia as fully qualified actuaries, but half of them are students. Many students have joined this volunteer effort. We have volunteers from 49 countries that were organized into 93 work streams. At this point, there have been over 120 outputs from that volunteer group that are available on the Pandemics Hub that the IFoA put together. As time permits, we could go there, or I'll give you a link to the Pandemics Hub at the end of this. Adam's jumping on with that. Good. So I got placed on a committee early on that's been coordinating ICAT activity. So we gathered documents from every work stream on what the scope of that work stream would be. We're helping to make sure there isn't duplication of effort and that those who need to know about other work streams are working together well. So there's a lot of project management in an effort like this, and actuaries become good at project management in addition to the mathematics and the business that they need to understand. I've also gotten involved with one work stream called the National Narratives work stream, which is looking at international comparisons on COVID-19. More on that later. Now, one of the first things that ICAT did was to survey all of the volunteers. This was in April, so we were just starting to feel the full impact of COVID-19 at that time, and over 400 actuaries who had volunteered for ICAT responded to this survey. Those of us in the central coordinating group gathered all the survey results and sifted through them to make sense of that and to put together a presentation on that. So I worked with several others on presenting the survey results back to the actuarial membership. This is one slide from that. I thought this was the most amazing slide. There were a lot of questions on the survey, a lot of ways that actuaries were thinking about what is happening. But this one just looks at where they were seeing an increase in activity and a decrease in activity. The decreases in activity come from lots of disruption that happened this spring. Budgets were uncertain. Costs of insurance were, there's clearly a big event here that was triggering a lot of insurance. A lot of business plans had to be put on hold. Hiring was put on hold. All of this, all of the arrows there led to business stresses. It was amazing how all the short-term concerns led to stresses on business that had to be understood and dealt with. But actuaries were also noting a lot of increases in activity, a need to revisit all assumptions, to do modeling and stress testing of results. And so in the longer run, for many areas of insurance and the actuarial calculations that go into them, there's an incredible increase in activity that comes out of a crisis like this. Those who are starting study in actuarial science now will come out of university in 3 years or 4 years into a world that has to recalculate and rethink the analysis of everything that's gone into our actuarial models. Now, on the National Narratives group that I got involved in, I've been talking to actuaries around the world. The lead for that National Narratives group is in New Zealand. I've been talking to actuaries in Singapore, Brazil, the United States, India, Austria. I'm going to start repeating probably if I keep going. Ed Plowman was one of that group from Japan who looked harder at some of the product innovations that have started happening because of the pandemic. So travel insurance has been hit hard and changed quickly by COVID-19. The any insurance that reimburses someone when their travel is canceled, there has been heavy claims and a reconsideration of how to go about that insurance. Motor insurance, with a quick fall off in how much people were driving. Some companies have issued premium refunds, so they had to calculate that quickly and make sense of what is reasonable to do there. New kinds of products are coming about, like usage-based models, paying by the mile for motor insurance instead of paying a flat amount per year. And there's new popularity for that because people are thinking about how much they drive. Cyber insurance has become important this year because there's always hacking and disruptive activity, but a lot of people working from home more have more of a problem with cyber attacks. We've seen an uprise in cyber attack activity anyway. And so actuaries are looking into the future of that and making sense of how to make a meaningful insurance product out of it, how to do the calculations, understand the data, and do calculations around that. Business interruption and event cancellation are very similar kinds of insurance, but there's been a crisis in that this year because a lot of business interruption and event cancellation is based on the idea of isolated interruptions or cancellations that could be paid for one-off. When you have when you have a pandemic that's interrupting business and canceling events across the board, then there's enormous pressure on any kind of insurance that's already out there. And there's a rethinking of how to do that kind of insurance as well. There have been new types of insurance. Any risky situation might need insurance. So vaccine delivery is a proposition that is very important to our entire society. And insurance has sprung up to cover vaccine delivery. Now, getting some money back for a vaccine delivery that fails and it couldn't be refrigerated and wasn't able to be used. That's small comfort, but it does help to restore the supply. I'd like to move away from COVID-19 just a little bit, take you to a slide that came from an organization called Club Vita. Some months ago, before we'd ever heard of COVID-19, I was at a meeting of the Welsh Actuarial Society where they presented some of the ways that actuaries are looking at the future. The point of being an actuary, as I said before, is to learn from everything we know in the past, but you're designing insurance for the future. So you have to make educated assumptions about what is going to happen in the future. This is an incredibly packed slide to look at how an actuary thinks about the future. If you're looking at mortality in the future, the rate of death in the future, this was before we'd thought about COVID-19, but they looked at, there are some bad things that could happen to mortality. There are some sort of neutral things that could happen to mortality. Maybe there would be a lot of deaths from Alzheimer's disease, but then a cure. And so the curve of mortality would be changed if that might happen. Now there's some very good things that could happen. We saw, because of the pandemic, that there was work that had been done on vaccines since SARS in the early 2000s that had not really come to fruition, and it was being worked on slowly. But due to the COVID-19 pandemic, vast amounts of work on vaccines were done, not just for COVID-19, but they finished all that work that had been started for SARS, developed quickly a vaccine for COVID-19, and now there has been a revolution in vaccine development this year. Future vaccines will come more quickly than ever before because of the moonshot of activity on vaccine development that happened this year. If we had that kind of revolution in cancer treatment, then that would be a very positive development on mortality that actuaries are trying to gauge all of these, attach some probabilities to all of these, understand what the shape of all of these possibilities would be. So you learn a lot of higher mathematics to think about those probabilities and the shapes of these possible changes, and to turn those into something that's actionable in a model that an insurance company is using to understand the future. Partly for the sake of keeping your company in business and stable to keep running and make a reasonable profit, but also in the public interest that people need insurance to take care of the things in their life that they can't take care of themselves financially. Now, Swansea University has an actuarial science program within mathematics, which I would say this is for students who love mathematics, who want to apply it to business risk in a meaningful and rewarding career. I hope that from the earlier slides, you've gotten the general idea, although I didn't use mathematical formulas here. Come to university and you'll see the formulas. You get that sense that that you're going to be doing higher mathematics. We will get you to the mathematics you need to know, and you'll be applying it to these kind of problems, which, as I said before, and I'll repeat it because it bears repeating, the student who comes out of university in 3 or 4 years in actuarial science or mathematics is coming into a world that is going to need those skills to recalculate everything post COVID-19. We are accredited by the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, one of less than 20 universities in the UK. Our program is a 3-year Bachelor of Science, which can include a year in industry. I should have added that we now have a year abroad program available. Students who have a weaker foundation or who need an extra year to get up to speed to really succeed at this program can do a foundation year before starting the 3-year BSc. 3/4 of the content you will get is mathematics. 1/4 is from our School of Management in accounting and economics and finance. Now, the most important part of the program is the coordination with the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. Any accredited program in the UK allows a student the opportunity to gain exemption from some professional exams that an actuary takes. An actuary on the job will eventually take 15 professional examinations to become fully qualified. I've been working with a fully qualified actuary, Rajeshwari VS, in India on the National Narratives Project, who's been through those 15 exams. She may have done some of them as exemptions from university. Our students get a head start of up to 6 exam exemptions. Then you go get a job and your company supports you to continue taking those examinations to become fully qualified. Our maths students or maths for finance students at Swansea can earn a smaller number of exemptions. They have more flexibility in the modules that they take and can earn 1 or 2 or 3 exemptions for actuarial science exams. Okay. The Institute and Faculty of Actuaries has a website that you can go to for more general information on actuarial science. I think Adam has that link also. And I think we'll throw it open for questions now. I'll stop the sharing. And let's see what you want to talk about here.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Randy. And a reminder to those joining us live, if you do have any questions, then to use that Q&A function. We've had one come in already. So is the IFoA exemption, Randy, based on old structure or the new structure post-2019? It's a question that's been asked.
Yes, excellent question. Swansea is a newer program. We started the program when I arrived, and we never worked with the pre-2019 IFoA exams. It was designed from the start for the 2019 exams. What this questioner is referring to is that the IFoA changed their structure of exams in 2019, and we had a blank page to design our modules to fit the new exams without having to tear them apart and put them back together differently.
Fantastic. Just while we wait for any more audience questions, Randy, you know, what we really gauged from that is, you know, when there is disruption, when there's dramatic change, as obviously we're all experiencing globally now, it does present opportunities in certain sectors. As you mentioned, global companies need to recalibrate how they practice. We're experiencing that ourselves, and obviously then they need to be stress tested and risks calculated and mitigated against. Are there any other real global challenges that would be pertinent to that? And I'm thinking of an example, you know, for those that want to live and work in the UK or Europe, Brexit will present similar challenges and opportunities for actuaries. And what would the need be around that in the UK or in Europe?
Well, Brexit is exactly that kind of a crisis that demands for everything to be revisited. And mostly Brexit is a change in all the business relationships, all the financial flow and connection, and reporting of how things go on. So regulation has to be rebuilt differently. There's a question of, do we continue the same rules and regulations, or are there going to be different ones that to be responded to? And who is regulating me right now? Actuaries in the United Kingdom are supervised by the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. The Financial Reporting Council in the UK also oversees that. That has been a purely UK regulation, but a lot of the regulations that were agreed between the UK and EU have to be rethought. A lot of course, mobility between EU and UK is disrupted and changed. Any insurance that has to do with moving things back and forth has to be, you have to go over all the assumptions again. Another example just as big that should come up is climate change. Actuaries model hurricanes and typhoons, and climate change is increasing those probabilities. So, as a statistician, you like to interpolate things between the data you have. But as you look into the future of climate change, you have to extrapolate. You have no choice but to extrapolate. And we all know the dangers of extrapolation. You're not on firm ground, but you need to understand those possibilities, and you need to understand the range of possibilities. What would be a good scenario, a likely scenario, and a bad scenario, so that consumers and an insurance company are protected from the range of possibilities.
Good. You kind of almost preempted my next question, was around climate change and addressing the climate change emergency. Now, of course, there is work to be done then to address the sort of natural impacts of climate change. What would you say then are the opportunities in actuarial science associated with government policies to address climate change? So you mentioned the Green New Deal earlier. I know it's hot in the UK with the incoming administration in the USA. Businesses are going to have to change practices. Again, if they're on board with all of that, some of it may be enforced. And so what would you have to say about that?
I would go back to that initial pseudo equation that I put up, that you look at risk as a function of time, money, and the probability of some bad thing happening. So when you look at a Green New Deal, you're looking into the future, you're looking over a time horizon, you're thinking about the money that you would invest now to create a Green New Deal. You're thinking about the probability of bad things happening in the future, and how much of an investment now can change those probabilities of bad things happening in the future. So you do a cost benefit analysis of what investments you're making. And so the government would have actuarial experts and other experts who are looking at, well, what if we invest $1 million, 10 million, or 100 million pounds in something? How will that change things?
A question has come in from the audience, Randy. What are the opportunities and benefits of partaking in a year in industry and or a year abroad as part of the programme?
Yeah, glad to see that question. One of the hats that I wear within our Department of Mathematics is that I'm the employability officer in the department. So I work with students who are doing a year in industry or who are getting their CV ready for a postgraduate employment. We also have dedicated employability staff working with students full time on preparing their CVs and going out and finding those opportunities. But one of my math students this past year was doing her project for the final year. She had done a year in industry at the home office doing queuing theory calculations, which is the mathematics of putting people in lines and understanding how that line is going to be dealt with. She came back for her final year of university, full of ideas and a sense of why she was doing that. Year in industry is a tremendous chance to get out and apply the mathematics and see what it's going to be like in industry before finishing your study. I highly recommend that. A year abroad, we have year abroad partnerships with various universities that, if you have an international perspective, then, the IFoA credential is recognized in many, many countries. As I noted, there were 49 countries represented in the IFoA ICAT group, the COVID-19 Action Taskforce. So IFoA reaches to many places, and a year abroad, if you are interested in taking an actuarial education into employment somewhere else, then you make that connection.
On that theme of employment and organisations, you've mentioned already, we had the student who did placement with the UK Government Home Office. Mm-hmm. What other organisations and companies within the department do we collaborate with in terms of placement providers, projects and employers, and what exposure do students have to them?
Oh, well, I mentioned the Welsh Actuarial Society earlier, which I attend when they have meetings. Admiral Insurance is a well-known UK brand for auto and homeowners insurance. They operate in Cardiff. They've been a great partner with the Swansea University Department of Mathematics all along. They are offering a year in industry this year for actuarial pricing of auto and home insurance. They're doing a tremendous reconsideration of all of that right now. So that would be a great opportunity for hands-on work. Quantum Advisory is another Welsh company that does pension consulting. And every company that offers a pension has to consider what kind of assets to hold to be able to pay all the pensions that they have promised to their employees. I've met actuaries all over the UK and the world through ICAT who are partners and connections to our students. On the more mathematical side, we have local partners in several companies that are doing medical testing and cooking up all the statistical work that's needed to understand effectiveness of vaccines and effectiveness of new drugs. PRA International and Verimed are two companies in Swansea who perennially hire mathematics graduates to do their statistical work.
Great. Just to finish off, then, you mentioned earlier, the work around investment, and generally, as a young person or a not so young person looking to go into study and careers, you want to invest in something that is small at the moment and with forecasting and foresight, is going to be, reap dividends to you, and you can get benefit and reward from it. And actuarial science as a sector is certainly that. What sort of advice would you give to anyone who is interested at this point in getting involved in actuarial science at study and career?
Well, I'd say don't get into it thinking, oh, that's where the money is, so I guess I'll just do that. Get into it if you love mathematics and want to see how that's applied in business. I've always loved mathematics. When I was younger, I wasn't thinking about where I would apply that, and it was a long route for me to reach actuarial science. If you want a little bit of actuarial science content, you can do a math or maths for finance program that gives you a lot of options and choices and graduate with some credential that will get you a job as an actuary, having a few exemptions from actuarial exams. Those exemptions are really key to coming out of university and going straight into an actuarial position. If you go into an actuarial science degree program, then all your modules are laid out for you. You're not choosing options, but you have a nice selection that is going to bring in not just mathematics, but also finance and accounting from experts in those fields as well. I think, the opportunities in 3 to 4 years are going to be huge because we will be getting on with business and everything will have to be redetermined.
Right. On that note, thank you so much for such an informative session, Dr. Wright. That was really interesting.
Well, thank you, Adam, and thanks to everyone who came along today with an interest in knowing more about actuarial science.
Fantastic. Right. Thank you for joining us, everyone, and hope you have a good day. Thank you, Randy. Bye.